Burlingame.
Here.
Evans.
Here.
Janser.
Here.
Olson.
Here.
Pittner.
Here.
Padragula.
Here.
Ross.
Here. Number 2, Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving on to item number 3, and that's the mayor's report. Not a whole lot to discuss. I did spend some time at the state legislature last Friday morning. Some of the mayors of the state spent some time with the governor to talk about legislative issues on Thursday night. I did have a meeting with the Trinity Hospital Reuse Action Committee, Community Economic Development Committee. We had a PFAS discussion. I see that's on the agenda tonight as well. And also Chamber Military Affairs Committee. They met on basis last week. And the Chamber EDC board meeting were the highlights of my report. So if there's any questions, if not, we will move on to item number 4, and that's the city manager's report.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. First of all, I'll be happy to answer any questions with regards to the city manager report that's included in the packet.
Any questions of the city manager?
If there's no questions on that, a reminder to council that tomorrow evening we'll be having our holiday employee party at the state fairgrounds. The city clerk has posted that meeting, so a quorum of the council can attend if you would like. It's meant to be a family-friendly event for the employees, and look forward to doing that tomorrow night. I'd also like to ask Mr. Sorensen to come and provide the council and the public an update with regards to some letters that went out from our water department this week.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So the reason for the letter that came out, that's a requirement of the Department of Environmental Quality. So what happened is every month we collect 50 samples from around the city, and it's a test for bacteriological activity, looking for coliforms or E. coli to make sure that there aren't any potential pathogens or anything like that in our water. So back in November, what happened was we had pulled a sample at a certain location. That sample failed. And once the state notifies us, then we have an opportunity to resample. So we resample that location, then we sample the location that's upstream and downstream of that site, plus a source water sample. So what happened was the water plant employees, they sampled the 3 locations, but they forgot to do, or they collected the wrong source water sample at the time. And then about a week later, the state notified us that we collected the wrong source water sample. By the time we got the source water sample in for testing, it was beyond the allotted time for that source water sample to go with the first 3 samples that came back negative. So it was, really just an unfortunate sampling error. At this point, that same location, we've passed subsequent testing in both of those locations. Would have been the month of December, and then probably another test in January already. So no indication of any contamination. It's just a notification that we have to do because of DEQ requirements.
Any questions of Jason? Oh, go ahead. Thank you, Jason. I think we're good.
Harold, I know we briefly talked about it last meeting, but could you give us an update on where we are with figuring out sidewalk snow removal?
Yes, Mr. Jonason, the Public Works Director, has prepared a request for quotes, prioritizing some of the key areas around the community. Those are published out this week, and we expect quotes back by February 3rd. That's a Friday, and then we have a council meeting that next Monday, which doesn't really quite give us enough turnaround to review the quotes and those kinds of things. So we're looking at February 16th council meeting of bringing that back to council with some actual numbers, assuming that the contractors respond to the requests for quotes. So February 16th is when staff is planning on bringing that back to council for consideration. Staff will also continue on another RFP for the remainder of the rest of the 10 miles of city sidewalks that we own, but we wanted to prioritize those key areas like the bridge overpasses and those kinds of things in this first round.
Any other questions of Harold? Thank you, Harold. Let's move on to consider the report of the Planning Commission. And I can just jump on to 5.1, correct? 5.1, the public hearing on the zoning map amendment, 28 North Main. Public hearing request by Kevin and Kaylee Black on behalf of 28 North Main LLC, owner of the zoning map amendment, owner for a zoning map amendment from M2 Heavy Industrial District to CBD Central Business District. The purpose of the request is to facilitate a mixed-use development. The legal description for the property is original minor addition lots 3, 10, and 1/2 Vac Alley on lots 3 through 7, lots 34 through 36, and part of 37 through 39, block 19, being south of a line 150 feet from the out parallel with, on the side, same portion of lots 37, 38, and 34 through 39, except the BN right-of-way. Address of the property is 28 North Main Street. So this is a public hearing for those who wish to speak for or against the zoning map amendment. Anybody wishing to speak for? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Kevin Black, resident at 1310 37th Avenue, Southeast Minot. I'll be very brief. We're really excited about this property. You may know it as formerly the Dakota Drug property. It was used historically as a manufacturing, bottling, and distribution hub for the company for many years. Our request here is really hoping to accomplish two things. Number one, move this out of M2 Industrial and into the Central Business District, which actually does align with the strategic plan that the city is moving forward with. It also gives us confidence that we can continue to move forward with the investment process of working with our architects, engineers, and consultants to stand up a mixed-use building that would complement some of the other activity going on downtown Minot. So happy to stand for questions, but thank you for considering this.
Any questions of Kevin? Thank you, Kevin. Any other comments for or against? If not, what are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor.
Mark?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we close the public hearing and approve the item as recommended.
Second.
We have a motion by Mark, second by Paul. Any discussion? Any discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
yes,
Pittner,
Yes.
Podjagula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Burlingame,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Motion carried. 5.2, public hearing zoning map amendment for the Pizza Ranch. Public hearing request by Mike Christensen on behalf of A&M Properties LLC for a zoning map amendment from C4 Planned Commercial District to C2 General Commercial District. The purpose of the request is to facilitate a future expansion of the existing building. Legal description of the property are lots 4 and 5, replat of lots 4, 5, and 6 of the Walmart addition. The address of the property is 305 37th Avenue Southwest. This is the time for public comments. We'll take comments for or against the proposed zoning amendment. Is there anybody who wishes to speak on this? Final call. Anybody wishing to speak for or against? If not, what are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we close the public hearing and approve the items with recommendations from staff.
Motion by Paul. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Carrie. Any further discussion? Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Pittner,
Yes.
Podjagula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Burlingame,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson.
yes,
5.3, public hearing zoning map amendment portion of subdivision Lot 6. Public hearing request by Austin Gleave on behalf of AW Properties LLC for a zoning map amendment from P Public District to R1 Single Family Resident for the purpose of combining with adjoining residential property zoned R1 Single Family Residential. The legal description of the property is subdivision of Lot 6, Section 24-155-83 West, half of the west half except the north 110 feet. The property is unaddressed and located just west of 701 10th Avenue Southwest. This is time for public comments, either for or against the zoning map amendment. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak either for or against the zoning amendment? Last call. If not, what are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we close the public hearing and approve the item with recommendations from staff.
We have a motion by Paul. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mark. Any further discussion? Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Pittner,
Yes.
Audrigula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Burlingame,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Moving on to item 5.4, public hearing on zoning text amendment on fencing. Public hearing request by the City of Minot for a zoning text amendment to accommodate changes in the land development ordinance of the City of Minot. The affected sections are as follows: Section 3.1-9 and 11, related to fence regulations and visibility triangles respectively. This is a time for anybody who wishes to come before the council to speak for or against the zoning text amendment. Anybody wishing to speak on this? If not, what are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I move we close the public hearing and approve the item.
Second.
Motion by Mark, second by Paul. Is there any further discussion?
I was wondering if Mr. Van Dyke can answer a couple of questions. Nothing hard. So tell me, Mr. Van Dyke, how did this come from user feedback with the new, like where did this proposed change, how did that arise?
Mayor Ross, Alderwoman Evans. This largely arose from a business up on North Hill who was attempting to delineate where their parking lot ended and a neighboring property owners began, as there was some type of dispute on, parking. They weren't as excited about the need to install a wooden fence or potentially a metal fence, or the material ended up being pretty expensive, and they didn't understand why the chain link couldn't be an alternative. We did actually bring this up at the Zoning Ordinance Steering Committee, probably the last meeting that we met with them, and some members felt that the design standards that we have for their C2 general commercial needed to stay in place. Others were more relaxed. At the end of the day, staff proposed that the chain link that would be permitted to adhere to the existing design standards, and that the powder coated, the black chain link would be an appropriate alternative to just simply allowing chain link in every instance. And this seemed to appeal to the property owner at this particular.
And were they also concerned about the height? Like why did the height change come about?
Right, so the height limitation in residential, so it's not applicable to commercial or industrial. Since I was touching this particular part of the ordinance, I cleaned up the rest of it as well. So prior code, pre-April 5th, 2021, there was this generic inflexible approach to fencing height, and it was at 6 foot tall. Well, when you have different topographical scenarios, then you're going to want a bigger fence in some instances. However, with larger fencing comes the potential to have spite fences, so building a fence for no other reason than just to block sunlight and bother your neighbor. So on April 5th, we had removed all of the fence height restrictions, so we haven't had any spite fencing issues in the city. Nonetheless, it was a good time just to make sure that, so 8 foot is the board length that you typically find the highest length, so 6 foot or 8 foot board lengths is what you're gonna find. 8 foot's fine for residential in some instances. Anything greater than that, so 8.5 feet, you're going to need engineering and a building permit. So the cost largely prohibits the reality of those being erected. You're going to be in violation of the building code, plus a tremendous amount of expense going into creating and erecting a spike fence anyway, and that's why it was eliminated from the code in the first place. We also wanted to put back in here a provision that that allowed Planning Commission to be able to evaluate when it was appropriate, when it wasn't. So topographical reasons would be one of them. That's really where that height restriction comes into play. And a lot of that language, so there's a lot of red on that fence regulation changes. It's all clarifying language. So the intent is all still there. It's just, it really needed to be reworded. It wasn't really touched with the last zoning update. So that's kind of where all these changes come from.
Well, I appreciate, first of all, like taking, citizen feedback and seeing if there needs to be tweaking. I mean, I think, we need to do that, more often with city code to see if there is, room for making it better and more user-friendly. And thank you for cleaning it up. We love a clean code.
Any other questions? Any other discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padugul,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Burlingame,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Moving on to item number 6, consent items. We have 16 items on the consent agenda. Lisa, do you have anything you need to have pulled?
No, I do not.
Okay. Are there any items wishing to, from the audience to be pulled from our consent agenda? If not, what are the wishes of the council?
Move approval on all consent items.
Moved by Paul, second by Scott. Any discussion? Any discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padugul,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Burlingame,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Moving on to action items. 7.1, 2021 abatement request for residential parcel MI 14.276.000.2170, owned by Denise Pettit. What are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mark.
I move we uphold the recommendation of the city assessor.
We have a motion to uphold the recommendation of the city assessor. Is there a second? Second by Carrie. Any discussion? Is there somebody who wishes to speak? Okay.
This is Denise Pettit. She's disabled, 100% deaf since she was born. She is what this program was made for. Her mother passed away in 2021. She was left with a mountain of a mess because her mom never taught her or showed her anything. She came to me. I'm a neighbor. I live on her street. Every once in a while, we'd mow her lawn, shovel her snow. She came to me because she needed help. There was nobody. She had nobody to help her. We started looking into things and started filling out forms, filling out what she request, And she's like, well, this is something that needs to be done too, and this was the homestead credit form. We filled it out. Sent it in. It was made into the office 18 days late, is what we were told why she was denied. She was denied and never told she was denied. She got a letter the end of 2022 saying she has delinquent taxes. And she was like, why are my taxes delinquent? I filled out the form. I did what I'm supposed to do. And I said, I don't know. So we called and asked. And we were told she was denied because she was 18 days late submitting the form. On the form, if anybody has it or has ever looked at it, it specifically says, if you believe you're eligible, file an application by February 1 or as soon thereafter as possible. I think 18 days is as soon there as possible. She was denied and never got sent a notice saying she was denied. So at the time of this, she had 2021 taxes and 2022 taxes that were delinquent because she never got notice. I asked, why don't you send out a notice to people so that they know? And it can be taken care of right away instead of when they've got 2 or 3 years piled upon them. And these are people that elderly and disabled who don't make a lot of money, who don't have probably the money to pay for 3 or 4 years in a row. So then they're going to lose their homes. I was told we didn't have the manpower. That's why we don't send out requests or denials for this stuff. I'm pretty saddened by that. As a community, that's what we do with our disabled and elderly.
Any comments, Carrie?
Hi. So I think the homestead credit is an amazing program. I'm looking at the application right now, the form 24-757, and where, and maybe I'm just missing it, does it say February 1st or as soon thereafter? Because I see but I'm looking at the actual form that.
Oh, no, this is the brochure that they,
Right, but I'm
have it on
actually looking
there.
at the actual form that she completed, the SFN 24-757, which right at the top says file application with the local
Mm-hmm.
assessor prior to February 1st of the year for which the credit is
Yes.
requested.
yes.
Like, that's a state regulation. That's not
Yes.
us. I mean, that's what is really unfortunate here is that, the state has set the deadline, not us as a city or a governing body or even Ward County. It is, the February 1st is the state's.
And I've
deadline.
addressed that with our state legislatures.
Right, good.
And I've also, pointed out on their own form
Yep.
that it says there afterward, so I have addressed that. I haven't received a response to my requests from them. So this is where we're left. Is this what I want to be doing? No. I don't want to be doing this. But she needs help.
So I just want to make sure, because we're approaching February 1st, that she's completed this year's. Okay, well, so that's,
And she completed last year's and was approved last year for 2022. Had an amount that she had to pay, a reduced amount
okay.
for 2022. Don't know how it works. I don't understand that stuff. I just try to explain it to her the best I can.
Well, my understanding, and maybe Damon can help illuminate, is that it's really like the state, right? That's setting that whatever that reduction is. Like, paint for us the picture of how this works, like how it trickles down from the state to us at a local level. Can he share the mic with you? This is our city assessor assistant.
So it's not that she filed her application late, it's because the property transferred into her name after February 1st.
Okay.
So if you look at the guideline that I provided, in the packet.
Yep, I see that, yep.
If you go to number 19, which would be on page 3, it says the applicant must reside on the property for which the credit is claimed, and as of the assessment date, have an interest in the property. Generally, such an interest can best be established by a written record or document such as a deed, contract for deed, or life estate.
She lived there her
Yep.
whole life with her mother.
Okay. And the deed that transferred the property from her mom to her, that's the date we go by, and that's a February. Got the deed here.
And was there any like contract for deed or anything, or was it like completely in her mother's name? And then after, death, then it passed? Like, was she ever, like, she's now on the deed, but wasn't at the time?
When her mom went into the nursing home, her mom was put in the nursing home in Kenmare.
Okay,
So it took us time to get an interpreter and to get her up there and me and a notary from usually a bank when I'm not working. So it did take quite a bit of time to get that done from the nursing home up there. When we got it done, the day we got it done is when it was turned in to the city.
to the state.
The deed would have been turned into
Oh,
Warren
the
County.
deed, you mean, yep,
Right.
Yep, and
not the
the deed
application.
is dated February 19th, 2021. So it's not that the application was filed
Right,
late.
it's the date,
It's
the
date.
interest
It's
in the
date on
property
the
came.
deed that we look at. So when they first contacted us, I did contact our city attorney, who then we both reached out to the state of North Dakota. And February 1st is the guideline that we're following, so.
Scott, I just want to clarify to make sure I'm hearing correctly. So what you're saying is there is no possibility that if you buy your house after, or if you acquire your property after February 1st, to get the homestead tax credit for that fiscal, or for that calendar year?
There is no mechanism in the Homestead Credit Act right now that allows us to prorate.
Well, obviously, just so everybody's clear, that's not the city of Minot making that decision. That's tax law coming from the state.
That's from the state of North Dakota, State Tax Department.
Well, it sounds like that could be a good thing to talk to our legislators about, is allowing some prorating. I mean, that seems ridiculous that 10 months.
Absolutely.
You happen to move in from February to December and you don't even get a prorated. I mean, I
last
know that's
time-
not us, but
The last time it was updated, the homestead credit, anything, was 2015.
making a note.
Okay, Mark?
So, I mean, what I'm hearing then is we don't have the ability to do anything with this. We can't violate the state regulations, and, we can't really just arbitrarily change the tax on this property, I don't believe. Is that, City Attorney, was that?
Go ahead, Steph.
I'm not aware of any means by which we could grant this particular application. I've checked with other city attorneys in both Grand Forks and Bismarck have confirmed that they would proceed the same way with this particular application. Keep in mind, it's a recommendation, so this will be taken up by the county commission as well. So there is an opportunity for the applicant to make a presentation to the county as well.
Does the county have that flexibility?
It says under state law that the Board of County Commissioners by a majority vote shall either approve or reject the application in whole or in part. If rejected, in whole or in part, a written explanation for the rationale signed by the chairman of the board must be attached to the application and submitted to the county auditor. So it appears as though there may be some more flexibility there, but I don't advise the county, so I don't know that I would want to speak too much as to what ability they have to grant or not grant that particular application. But there is an opportunity to present this to another hearing body as well.
Do you guys know what somebody on Social Security like her makes a year? Because it's actually pretty sad. She makes $10,000 a year. So this $2,500 tax bill is huge. It's huge. And I think that it's a shame that this is, what we've become as a society, what we do with our elderly and our disabled. It's not this.
Can I'd like to just respond quickly. I 100% agree with everything you're saying. And my contact information is available online. I'll also give you my card if you hang out till we're done tonight. Please reach out to me. I can help with this stuff both through this job and my other one. I'm angered by this situation. I think it's completely unacceptable. I don't know that we as a city have a mechanism. I want to have a mechanism.
Thank you.
So I want you to know that the vote on this is not saying that we think this is right. I think it's ridiculous, and I think it's a law that needs to be changed by the state, and I think the state needs to hear from you. And if they haven't responded from you yet, that's unacceptable. So I will also be helping to reach out for that. Because this is exactly the opposite of everything that we want to be doing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Scott. Any other comments?
Also, I just want to, what's the friend's name? Ma'am, has she applied through the North Dakota Homeowner Assistance Fund Plan, which gives, I'll give you that information afterwards, but that also helps, it's some COVID money the state got, but the state also threw some money in as well.
Okay.
That will help with, is under the Department of Human Services here in North Dakota.
Okay.
And it does help, it's very income-based, so I think she would qualify.
What's it called again, ma'am?
It's called the North Dakota Homeowner Assistance Fund Plan.
Yes.
And I'll get you we'll talk afterwards.
Okay.
But yeah, it's all, if you just, if you Google North Dakota Homeowner Assistance Fund Plan, there is like an outline of it and then how to apply and stuff like that. But they still do have some funds left because I just worked with somebody who got some mortgage payment assistance last week. So
Okay, I appreciate that.
it could
Thank
help
you.
with something, hopefully.
Absolutely, and we can help with that too, so.
Thank you.
And I don't know if she has a mortgage or not, but they can assist with other things as well, so.
Doesn't.
Utilities.
I asked
Yeah.
her.
So
and
maybe
she
if we can
didn't
help
know
with some
what it
other
was,
things.
So,
Yeah, like it helps with utilities and stuff like that too. So,
Okay.
I mean, you're matched up with somebody and then they'll try and sort of really hammer down what like the homeowner or renter needs and what is possible.
all right, thank you.
Thank you, Carrie and Scott. There's nothing further, please call the roll.
Chancer,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Burlingame,
Yes,
Evans,
Yes.
Excuse me. Let's move on to 7.2, bid for pickups and SUVs, project number 4731. What are the wishes of the council? Wishes of the council?
I'll move to move the 3 items for approval.
I'll second.
Motion by Carrie, second by Steve. Any further discussion? Any further discussion?
And just to be,
Carrie?
who wrote the memo on this? Was it Lance? but we're foregoing, I just want to we're foregoing the sealed bid process because there was no bids submitted, correct? I just want to get that on. I know it's in the memo, but.
Mayor Russ, Alderwoman Evans, yeah, you're correct. We had a bid opening date. There were no bids submitted on the bid opening date. Wesley Motor Company, who we're recommending award to, they had intended on bidding, so they had the quotes done, but they thought the bid opening was the following Tuesday, so they just missed the bid opening date. I reached out to a couple other dealers and didn't get any responses.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Mark?
Yeah, I would just add that, you know, buying vehicles these days is a challenge. I talked to another dealer in town today after I talked to Jason this morning, and you know, basically they were non-responsive because they don't have any supply. What they have available doesn't meet the desired configurations, and so they really didn't have a choice.
Thank you, Mark. Any other comments? If not, please call the roll.
Evans?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Pittner?
Yes.
Rajagula?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Burlingame?
Yes.
Motion passed. Moving on to the next two items, I'm going to kind of combine these items, but I think we'll take 7.4 first, garbage collection, landfill, water, and storm sewer rate setting. What are the wishes of the council?
For 7.4, I will make a motion to approve the attached ordinance and, yeah, and remove, right, that's the attached ordinance one. So I'll make that recommendation to approve the attached ordinance.
Motion by Carrie, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Paul. Discussion.
And again, I think Mr. Sorensen explained this in the memo, but this is, right, this is the only area we do this not by resolution, but through ordinance. And so this is just coming into line how the other departments are, correct?
Mayor Ross, Alderwoman Evans, you're correct, yeah. These would be, all airport fees are done by resolution, I believe. Our sewer fees are done by resolution, but for some reason, water and storm sewer weren't, landfill garbage weren't. So it's just kind of getting everything in line with the rest of our fee setting.
Right, and you did the due diligence and reached out to the city attorney and stuff, and there didn't appear to be any reason why it had been divided up like this.
No.
So it's just really making it consistent with how we do it with the other departments. Okay.
Correct. Any other questions or comments on 7.4? If not, please call the roll.
Evans?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Pittner?
Yes.
Rajagula?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Burlingame?
Yes.
Moving back up to 7.3, garbage collection rates.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mark.
I move that we approve option A.
Second.
Motion by Mark, second by Lisa. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Steve?
Oh.
Oh, sorry, Mark. Go ahead, Mark.
Okay. So what's in play here is, you know, inasmuch as we are for recycling, and I certainly am, I made the motion because we also represent the folks who are not in favor of recycling and who were given a commitment earlier on that they would be able to opt out. We hope that that won't be a lot of people, but doubtless there are some citizens who don't want to participate in recycling, and we have previously given them some assurance verbally that they would have that option. If we give everybody a container and charge everybody whether they're participating or not, I think we're going back on the discussion about opting out. Under option A, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we set the rates for those who are participating, and I'm told that between the middle or end of July, when the containers will be delivered, that the charge for recycling will only start in September or some date a couple of months hence. During that time, those who want to opt out would have the opportunity to have their container picked up or return it, and going forward, they would not be billed for the recycling portion. So I think that meets what we have previously told citizens, and at the same time, if they do decide that they can get on board and they keep the container, then they'll be paying for recycling along with those that want to do it. So that's why I made the motion.
Thank you, Mark. Steve?
He's letting me go first. So I'm going to oppose this motion. I support option B. I was not on the council when the opt-out option was passed. I would have never supported that. I think we don't allow citizens to opt out of other services. I don't have any children in school, yet I can't opt out of paying my school taxes. People may not use the parks. They can't opt out of that portion of their taxes. We are going to leverage $60,000 by delivering universal carts for everybody. Certainly, they can give the carts back, but it's going to cost the administration alone of keeping track of opting out is cumbersome on our public works staff, to a lesser extent on our finance staff. And I think, the additional $2 a month on everybody's bill is how we collect other kinds of taxes for services we provide in the city. And I think we should continue that route with recycling.
Steve?
I just wanted to echo what Mark has said. When this thing first came up, it received much more approval than expected, and part of the reason so many people supported it is even if they didn't want to recycle or felt it was a poor idea, they liked the idea of some freedom of choice. And I think we have an obligation. It was sold to us as an optional program. I might have preferred
Well,
it
it
be.
still will be optional, though.
Might
You
have-
don't have to recycle.
Right, but you still pay for it.
You still pay for the parks.
Right. This is also a fee for a service. I don't think it's a general tax. But anyway, the proposal was conveyed to the public and to us as a voluntary program, and I think it would be a mistake to go back on that. My original thought was to delay it for 2 weeks to give the public a chance to think this through and to contact us, but I'm comfortable going with Mark's proposal at this point to expedite things. I also think it's important that people have a chance to choose the size of the cart. Some of us aren't quite as strong or as physically able as we used to be. Some of us also don't have room in our households or garages for these 95-gallon carts, and I think preserving some element of choice there is an important way of having greater palatability for the program. Having said that, I think we should have general community recycling. I think that's very important. But again, I think for me, the principle of following through with the commitment we made to the citizens is more important. So I will support Mark's motion and make it voluntary fully, both in terms of participation and in paying for it.
Thank you, Steve. Mark?
Can I just go back and maybe if I could have Jason clarify? So my understanding is that the way this the way this would go under option A is, at this point, everybody's gonna get a cart. The grant is going to be accepted and funded based on that. And that within the time frame between when they get the cart and when the billing starts, they would have the opportunity to return it. And then at that point going forward, they would not have been billed any money, and they would not be receiving a bill for recycling. So we're not losing $60,000 of grant money. And yes, there is a bit of work for the staff to do to make that happen, but we knew that all along. That isn't anything new or changed from what the plan had originally been presented as. So can you confirm any and all of that for me, please?
Mayor Russ, Alderman Jans here. So I guess just let's go back a little bit as to how this program has evolved over the last couple of years. With the optional program, what we were originally talking about doing is, we wanted, basically an opportunity for people to opt out. We wanted an opportunity for people to select a different can size. So those are manual surveys that we have to do as part of staff. So when we started meeting with the recycling partnership, as you get away from mandatory programs, if you get away from 95-gallon carts, then the grant award goes down. So in order to leverage that, what we're going to do is deliver a cart to every current customer of the City of Minot Sanitation, everything up to a duplex, 3plexes, 4plexes, those will be an opt-in because they currently have a lot of containers to deal with. And there's not a lot of space in the street and stuff. So we would like to work with those people individually. But we'll deliver containers to all of our current single-family and duplex residents. They'll get those carts probably sometime in June. We're looking at about July 17th is going to be our implementation date for recycling. So everybody's going to have a cart. Everybody can recycle for the first couple months, and during those first 2 months they can call us and opt out, or they can call us and select a different can size, and then basically on about October 1st, whoever still has a container, then they would start paying the additional $250 that's on the option A. That's how that was laid out.
Scott, did you have something?
Yeah, it's all questions for Jason, so I'm glad you didn't go sit down and I didn't waste your steps. First off, when the recycling does begin in these programs, what days does it work? And I think I know the answer, but I want the public to know, like, is it going to be every other time, every third time? How is that going to be processed?
Mayor Ross, Alderman Burlingame, so what currently we collect garbage twice a week. So what we're going to do with recycling is every other week we'll swap a garbage day for recycling. So you'll have 1 week you'll have 2 garbage, the next week you'll have 1 garbage, 1 recycling, and then that repeats.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about, I think that obviously a lot of us that have talked to people have heard two primary things. I hear a lot of, why doesn't Minot have recycling? Well, we're answering that question. We're going to bring recycling regardless of which one of these two pass tonight. But part of the advantage of recycling is, of course, is that it reduces our usage of the landfill. Can you give me some ideas? And I'm sorry, I should have asked you this in advance, so I apologize, but what's the rough cost for the replacement of a landfill when that happens?
Mayor Ross, Alderman Burlingame, when we were looking at the expansion of our current landfill, there was a lot of, debate and a lot of focus groups and a lot of public meetings regarding it. If we're going to pick up and move to a different location, those numbers get really large. We have a lot of invested infrastructure in our current location. You should have warned me before.
I'm so sorry.
I could get you those numbers, but they're...
It's tens of millions, correct?
It is, definitely.
And so that's why it's a significant future cost for the city. And the longer that we can put that off, the better for the taxpayers, correct?
Definitely.
And do you have any idea of how much participation in recycling will help slow that down? Is there any like data available for that?
Mayor Russ, Alderman Burlingame, it's really, it's a hard number to get at, but just looking at pure tons on an average annual basis, we put about 70,000 tons of MSW, municipal solid waste, into the landfill every year. We're estimating our initial rollout of recycling will probably curb, somewhere in the neighborhood of probably around 1,800 tons. So 1,800 tons is a very small amount of 70,000, but that just includes the 13,000 customers that we have within the city of Minot. It doesn't include all of the commercial customers, and it doesn't include the 6 counties that bring material to us for disposal. So that's what we've been talking all along, as we get our program off the ground, then we need to figure out ways to incentivize getting recycling out into the region as well to get that number, the recycling number up, and that total MSW disposal number down.
Yeah, so I'm torn on this, and since I read it, I've been torn on it because I feel like, again, I understand that councils in the past have made a commitment, and I think it's very important to honor that, and I also do, and I have heard from the people that are just anti-recycling, they don't want to touch it, but also I feel an obligation to save money, and the more that we can do, the more we can do to encourage recycling, the longer we can push off this massive expense. And our city's got enough massive expenses between, flood control and NAS project and all these big projects. We don't need one more big project anytime soon. So the longer we can push that off, the better. So I'm really torn with this because I want people to do recycling. Do you have any idea of what the opt-out rate is going to be? Is there any data that you've been able to see that we can use for this decision?
Mayor Ross, Alderman Burlingame, we did a statistically valid survey back in probably about 2019, somewhere around in there. So when you asked a blanket statement of the sample group, I think about 65% supported recycling at no cost. And then once you started adding dollar amounts, that participation went down. So we're looking at about $250. When you asked the same question at about I think it was about $2 to $3 charge, the support fell to about 56%. So that's the best data that I can get my fingers on. And once real life happens and we roll this out, we just don't know until it rolls out.
And am I also correct in my memory that this is a one-time opt-out? So if the house sells, there's not an opt-out going forward, is that correct? So
that is correct.
So at some point in the future, the opt-out rate will continue to decrease as homes sell, correct?
Right. We should gain additional customers, pretty much every time a house is sold or somebody moves over time.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you, Scott. Paul?
Thank you, Mayor. Jason, I guess the first question will be, maybe my first question might be for Damon. Damon, how many houses sell in the city of Minot, and how many houses are built? And I guess the follow-up might be for Jason is, are new construction homes, are they given the option to opt out?
Mayor Ross, Alderman Pittner, I would say no. Unless it was built prior to that October 1st cutoff date, everything after that would be an automatic opt-in.
Okay. And then Damon, I guess just how many transactions are in the city of Minot? Shot from the hip.
Mayor and Alderman, we see about probably 700 to 800 homes traditionally sell each year. There's quite a few more transfers that happen during the year, but those are quick claim deeds from family member to family member. As far as how many houses or single-family dwellings are built each year, I think over the past 2 to 3 years, we've been at that 100 mark, 100 and a quarter mark, counting single-family and townhomes.
Okay, thank you. So I guess just my logic there, you're going to gain about 700 to 800 users per year just through transactions alone and the opt-out not transferring with the property as well. So, and I guess while I have the floor, I'll just give you my thoughts on this. I'm with Mark, Alderman Jansen, Alderman Plachakula on this. I really have little to no heartburn either way. My wife and I, we're not going to opt out. We'll recycle. We'll participate. Again, with Alderman Burligame's comments, I think it's beneficial for the community as a whole to delay any projects with the landfill. Anytime that life can be extended, I think it's a benefit. However, this is what we sold the community on. This is what the council at the time, and I was a part of that council through those discussions, made this decision to provide the opt-out. I'm not in favor of pulling what I consider somewhat of a bait and switch to the community. I think it's just the right thing to do, and I think we'll be surprised how many people will participate in it, just because they'll be losing a garbage day in there anyway. So it's going to be more efficient to get rid of your extra cardboard and recyclables to put them in a bin and put them on the curb. So.
Thank you, Paul. Any further
Mr.
comments?
Mayor.
Yes, Lisa.
Thank you. I would be in agreement with Alderman Janser's motion as well. I was part of the council when all of this discussion started, which seems like now a number of years ago. But each time that we had the discussion, there were people who wanted a guarantee that they would have the option to opt out. And all through those discussions and through every decision that we made, we assured them that they would have that option. And I stand behind that. I certainly hope that most people choose to recycle. I personally will myself. And I think with good education, I think that will make a difference as well. But we need to stand behind what we told our citizens we were going to do. So I will be voting in favor of option A.
Lisa, any other comments?
Jason, is the other North Dakota cities, do any of them allow for opting out?
Mayor Ross, Alderwoman Evans. So I think the city of Bismarck did a similar opt-out. That's kind of where I got the idea from. I believe the city of Fargo is 100% optional. I'm not positive. Dickinson is mandatory, and not sure on the city of Grand Forks. So there's kind of a mishmash smattering of how different cities do it.
All right, thank you.
And Jason, it's an ultimate goal of any recycling program to have 100% participation.
Most definitely, yeah. You know, and just, I guess, to give a little context, the reason I brought this forward, just, you know, for a little clarity, this program has evolved a lot since our original discussion of opt-out, and we're, to implement this program, we're currently spending a lot more money than we originally intended to. You know, the transfer facility came in, you know, probably about double what we expected. The trailers came in much higher than we expected. So we have a lot of money invested in this program, and I just thought it made sense for, you know, to get as many users on board as we could on day one. But either way, either option, we'll fund the program. We'll make whichever one. You guys are the policymakers. I can come up with great ideas and present them to you, but ultimately it's you guys that take a lot of the phone calls and have to make the decision. So,
Steve.
I just wanted to respond to that, and I appreciate you, Jason, laying out for us the logical, the rational, and the professional option here that makes the most sense, and I agree with that completely. As you said, though, there's a different perspective at our level. We have to consider the political and the public policy implications. I strongly support recycling and other environmentally friendly measures, but I think it boils down, for me, to an issue of trust and political decision we made. You know, in public life and politics, we never get everything we want. Nobody gets everything they want. And to get this recycling program, to get significant support for it, majority support in the community, it was a compromise that I think at the time had to be made. I was on the council when this first came up and when we made that compromise. So that's the reason, you know, my heart very much would support universal mandatory recycling, but that's not the deal we sold people. I think we have to honor our commitments. And I don't see any reason or any problem for there being a difference between what you're recommending. We're asking, we're paying for your expertise and you're saying this is the best program, and I accept that totally. And I understand you accept our need to have a little bit different perspective, so that I don't see any opposition or any disagreement here. It's just a matter of our perspectives are somewhat different. And I really appreciate you putting so much time and effort, you and your colleagues, into this program. It's something that's long overdue. We're so close to it now, and I wanted to go through, and I really appreciate all the effort. Like I said, it's something we should have done a long time ago, but we're finally getting there now.
Yeah. I believe, just for the record, I think February of 2016 was the first time I stood in front of council and talked about recycling. So, yes, it has indeed been a long project.
Coming up on your anniversary. Final comment, Carrie.
Final comment. So I just want to, I said it once, but I want to say it again, is I was not on the council that made this commitment. And so my no vote is not going back on any promise or vote I made. That's it.
Call the roll.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Burlingame,
No.
Evans,
No.
Option A carries. Move on to 7.5, builders and homeowners property tax exemptions. What are the wishes of the council?
Move approval.
Second.
We got a motion by Paul, second by Scott. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? John?
Thank you, Mayor Ross. Members of the council, I do have a presentation. It's 6 slides total, so it's not going to be a long one. So I wanted to start off the discussion on 7.5 and then ultimately 7.6 by talking about arrested developments within the city of Minot. So what is an arrested development? So an arrested development is a subdivision that has been platted or legally approved and entitled for construction. However, it's missing the necessary infrastructure, whether it's water, sewer, streetlights, roads, for example. So in this image on this slide, for example, the light blue bounded lots are platted, they're legally entitled. However, as you can see from the image, the road ends right as it's entering that corridor. So the developer has yet to install the necessary infrastructure to support construction on these particular lots. So in most instances, the developer is responsible for the initial installation of the infrastructure, and then the city will maintain in perpetuity the infrastructure that's installed. So where are these arrested developments located within the city of Minot? So most of them are concentrated in the northwest portion of the city. These black lines that kind of carve out the city into quadrants fall along Central and Main Street. So for those who weren't aware, that's how we delineate the suffix that follows the street name. So anything in the northwest quadrant of northwest corner of Central and Main would carry the suffix of northwest, and so on and so forth along the other 3 quadrants. So as far as the 7 developments in the northwest, 200 of these are shovel-ready, and then there's a further 699 that need infrastructure. So there's these effectively dead subs that have approximately almost 900 lots in northwest portion of the city. The southwest, Southwest Crossing is the one. This is just west of Trinity. There's 63 and 0 that are shovel-ready. The southeast portion of the city, that's where 55th Crossing is. I broke these out on the east half of 55th Street is the breaking point between the east half and west half. Effectively, there's 146 shovel-ready lots within that subdivision and 593 that need further infrastructure. And there's none in the northeast quadrant. So in total, we've got 346 shovel-ready lots and a further 1,355 need infrastructure. So you're probably thinking that's a lot of shovel-ready lots. Well, shovel-ready does not mean available to build. So some of these lots for sale exceed prices necessary for builders to be able to financially make it pencil. At the end of the day, a lot of this property was purchased during the oil boom. And so some of these landholders may be under at this time, and they're just patiently waiting till they can sell and either break even or make a marginal profit. So they're hanging on to it, some of them. Some of the lots are for sale, but they need to be sold either at the entire blocks or possibly the entire subdivision needs to be sold at once. Well, a typical builder's not gonna have that kind of capital to be able to acquire that many lots, not all of them. Again, some of the lots are just simply not active and ready for sale, not actively listed for sale. And in this particular instance, this is Bolton Heights, and this is in the northwest part of the town. As you're driving along the bypass, you see those apartment complexes off to the west. This is in that vicinity. So the 66 lots highlighted in light blue maintain the necessary infrastructure to build, although they've been platted since 2013, and you've seen very, very, very little activity along that, even though they're ready to go. So I'm going to give you some figures on at least the annual new housing unit starts. So this kind of touches on what was just discussed. So there's been 450 housing units over the course of 2020, 2021, and 2022. Single family and twin home housings dropped noticeably in 2022. This is very likely a function of the rates. Multifamily projects are typically fewer in frequency. So Blue on Broadway is one of them. They're going to have a higher number of units than established inherently. We've got Beyond Shelter in Northwest Minot, it's 54 units, homeless LMI development at 23 units, and then the Tracks, the Maverick building, came in at 49 units. So all these kind of pop up and prop up the 2020, 2021, 2022 figures. Likely into 2023, we're going to have the Sheridan building as part of the Tracks. It's going to come with 70+ units as well for multifamily. The 2040 comp plan that will be finalized later in 2023 projects the population rising by 14,500 approximately from 2020 figures. So this equates to the need for 6,600, give or take, housing units by 2040. So on average, that means we need 300 housing units per year between 2020 and 2040. The last 3 years have averaged approximately 150 units each year. So for reference, 2020 we had 177 total units, as multifamily, single family, and twin home. 2021 would be 150 units, and 2022 dropped to 124 units. So one of the efforts that staff has been working on has been to compile more detailed information on a lot of these arrested developments. And so we've established a story map that goes over and kind of focuses on some of these developments within the city. So if you're interested in more information, that link does work, it's live. Just keep in mind that some of the information is still under construction. I've got about 7 of the 10 subdivisions completed. I'll continue to work on it as time permits, probably through the end of the month or maybe even into February. I plan to get this done and hopefully share it, to use as a marketing tool and bring awareness to some of these subdivisions that are at least half ready to go, and hopefully get those that are interested in building within the city of Minot to connect with others that possibly own the property. Maybe they can partner. So I definitely encourage you to look at some of this stuff and get more aware of some of these subdivisions out there. And so I really just wanted to present this information as kind of a foundation as we lead into, Brian's going to come up and talk about this program that might incentivize and encourage more development within the city. Clearly, there's a housing need long-term, and really I just want to bring awareness to some of the issues with regard to these subs as carryover from really the product of the oil boom, and then also the housing demands that stem from flood. So happy to stand for any questions as it relates to this. I'm not the primary as far as the overall topic with regard to.
Any questions of John?
I just want to say, fantastic. I love the fact that we're doing this. I think that being able to promote potential building on sites that are already within our existing infrastructure is smart development. And, it's one of those things that can help bring new housing on without increasing the cost of providing those services. So I appreciate all the work that's been done on this.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I just want to set a few things straight before the vote takes place with both of these property tax exemptions. There is a builder's tax exemption which lasts for the construction year when the home is under construction. And then there's a homeowner's property tax exemption which would last for 2 years. By state law, we can only exempt up to $150,000 of the true and full value of the improvements. During these periods, the builder and the homeowner will still be paying the property tax on the land and any improvements that are valued more than $150,000. This is not like a Renaissance Zone program where they get a 5-year abatement. They still will be paying property taxes on the land, anything above $150,000. I Googled this afternoon the number of cities and counties in the state that use this program: Fargo, Grand Forks, West Fargo, Cass County, Williams County, Rugby, Wahpeton, just to name a few. It's used by many different cities and counties throughout the state. I do know that the city of Minot used this program prior to the flood, and they disbanded the program after the flood because there really was no need to incentivize new housing growth since the city was booming during that time. So I stand available to answer your questions, and I ask for your support.
Any questions of Brian? No questions? Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? If Paul?
I'll just say again, thank you to staff. I think this is a great tool that our community can use to incentivize just infill into shovel-ready developments and where infrastructure has been invested, and again, see some of those grow the pie, as we say, to lessen the burden on other taxpayers. So again, I think it's a great program.
Thank you, Paul. Any other comments? If not, please call the roll.
Pittner,
Yes.
Quadrigula,
Yes.
Roth,
Yes.
Burlingame,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
So moving on to item 7.6, Housing Study RFP Budget Amendment. What are the wishes of the council?
I move to authorize the staff to post the RFP and the budget amendment.
Second.
Motion by Carrie, second by Paul. Any comments? Mark?
I just had a question for Brian, I guess. Thanks. Brian, I'm fine with doing this. I guess I have a question about the process. It seems like, typically we would do the RFP and then get a number back, and then we would look at the number and approve that. Is that sort of typical process? And here it looks like we're approving an amendment to the budget of a number that we don't actually have.
Mayor Ross, Alderman Janser, yes, we are amending the budget to go up to $150,000. It's my hope that we can spend less than that. The RFP process, one of the criteria that we use to judge the RFPs is the cost. So it's possible that the cost figure can come in under $150,000. That's why we budgeted for $150,000, and we put a do not exceed figure in the RFP for $150,000 as well.
Okay. I guess if, the only problem I have with that is if I were a vendor looking at doing this, I think I know where my bid would come, or my RFP would come in.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't be a whole lot less than 150,000.
Mayor Ross and members of the council, we can certainly take the number out of the RFP, but I'm not sure what kind of bids we're going to receive.
Paul, did you have anything? I know you had your hand raised. Okay. Carrie?
So I think this is too important of a long-term planning tool to, quibble about whether or not it's going to be 100,000 or 150,000. I mean, am just delighted that you and the city manager had the foresight to come to us with, instead of us, trying to, have ad hoc kind of people telling us what they think the housing, needs are in this city, to have an actual, professionals telling us what that is so we can do smart growth and planning for our community is brilliant. And I think we're going to get in some good bids from folks who do this for a living. And I look forward then to modifying perhaps our growth strategy and our LMI strategy and other housing strategies in the city to more comport with reality.
Great. Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Anything else?
And this is coming out of the Sales Improvement Fund, correct, Mr. Lakefield? Right, which has, there's money in there, right? Yes, so we're not allocating it from something, that we already have committed to some other area. It is in a fund that has the funds, so, and is intended for this kind of economic, because this is an economic development issue, so. Okay, that's it.
Please call the roll.
Evans?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Pittner?
Yes.
Rajagula?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Burlingame.
Yes.
Motion carried. Item 7.7, purchase of 8 2023 police Ford utility vehicles. What are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I move approval.
Second?
Motion by Scott, second by Carrie. Any discussion?
I'm just impressed it only is $8,500 more. Like I was, I guess I'm expecting the worst, right, with inflation and everything, that everything we plan to purchase in 2023 or 2024 is going to be, quadruple. So I'm pleasantly surprised it's only $8,500 for an increase to get these 8 vehicles that we've already allotted budget for.
Any other comments? If not, please call the roll.
Burlingame.
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Pittner?
Yes.
Rajagula?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes. Motion carried. Item 7.8, the Ward County Connector Raise Grant Request. What are the wishes of the council?
I'll move approval of the item.
Second.
Moved by Mark, second by Paul. Any discussion?
And just to reiterate, this is a 50-50 split with the county, so we are not committing, to do the whole funding request. It is going to be split evenly between us and the Ward County Commission.
Thank you for your clarification. Nothing else, please call the roll.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Pittner?
Yes.
Rajagula?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Burlingame?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Moving on to item number 8, this is personal appearances. This is a time when anybody from the audience can step forward and present to the council.
Good evening, Mayor Ross, members of council. I got a script, keep me on point. My name is Kirk Sather. I reside at 1422 Hiawatha Street. Thank you for your time and this opportunity to be heard. I'm here to discuss the proposed sidewalk project on Hiawatha Street, but before I begin, I want to acknowledge that the importance of the project is not lost on me. My presence here today is not entirely self-seeking. I'm eager to see the project completed so that safety and well-being of residents can be improved. My primary reason for being here is the high potential for a significant loss of property value to my home due to the loss of the only 3 mature trees on my property. The 3 trees are directly within the path of the proposed sidewalk and will need to be removed. I have discussed this with Mr. Derek Anderson and have asked him to check whether any provisions have been made to compensate property owners such as myself who stand to lose the most. He said there is not. The proposed compensation is 63 cents per square foot at 900 square feet for a total proposed compensation of $572.67. I expect that every property owner has been made the same offer regardless of whether trees will be lost. According to arbor.org and money.com, trees can increase property value between 3 and 15% of the property value. Using an extremely conservative estimate of my property at $300,000, 3% would be $9,000. I've already sought the expertise of a tree mover, but due to the proximity of the trees to the utility lines, I was told there is nothing that can be done to move them. Lowe's Garden Center has provided me with an estimate for 12 to 15-foot trees that will cost me over $4,000 to have installed. One additional concern is the relocation of irrigation lines. There's no mention in the legal documents for who's responsible for that or any expenses incidental to the project. In closing, I support this project because our community and children deserve a safe place to walk. Conversely, I feel I am disproportionately and adversely affected by this project. Please reconsider compensation for this project as it pertains to the loss of property value resulting from loss of trees.
Carrie?
Lance, could you, I'm just curious, can you maybe answer the questions about how do we determine compensation and the irrigation line issue?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor and Alderwoman Evans. Here's what's going on. So there's 3 trees that Mr. Sather is talking about. However, they're not on his property. They're within the public right-of-way. So that's the difference here.
Okay.
If we were going to, if the trees were in the temporary easement that we're looking to acquire, then we'd come up with a value. And typically it's, it's several $100s a tree is what we've done in the past for other residences. Now, in my years here at the city, if we have to take out any shrubs, trees, whatnot within the public right-of-way, we've never paid for that because those are considered at risk. So sprinkler systems, trees, shrubs, landscaping, whatnot, if the city has to do a project or one of our franchise utilities and that has to come out, then we don't pay for that. So we've been consistent on that for as long as I've been here, which is almost 15 years. Now, what the easement is for is essentially for workability for our contractor and to help tie the grade of the yard of their property into the back of the sidewalk that we're going to construct. If their decision is not to grant the city Minot the easement, then we'll still be able to build the sidewalk, but in some locations we'd have to put up about a 6 to 8 inch retaining wall curb that goes on the back of the sidewalk that helps ease that transition and elevation from their private property to the public right-of-way. So some people like the curb, some people don't, most don't. So we try to get the temporary easement, and that allows us to grade into the property to tie everything in. Likely what would also happen is at the intersection, because they live on a corner lot, where we had to put the ADA ramp in just because of the elevations needed, we'd probably have to put the retaining wall curb in at the corner. Along the property, we may be able to adjust the sidewalk up and down to try to stay within those grades. But unfortunately, the trees, because of their size and where they're located within the public right-of-way, they're going to center punch the sidewalk, and we can't shift it to make this work. Otherwise, it'd be back right on the back of the curb. We all know what happens in the wintertime. We lack space to store snow. It's going to sit on the sidewalk, and that's not good for anybody. So unfortunately, this is where we have to be at. And, staff wants to be consistent on how we handle these with only paying for damages on the private property, not on the public right-of-way.
So it would be a whole different calculation and compensation if it was actually on Mr. Sadler's property?
Correct.
Okay.
Regarding the sprinkler lines, what we're doing with those along these projects, we are paying for repairs because we are getting temporary easements that have to go up inside of the residents' property. A lot of times when we do that grading, we're going to impact the sprinkler system in some way, shape, or form. So in that case, we do make the repairs. That's part of the project cost. If this was just a traditional project where we're doing work within the right-of-way, the homeowners are on their own for any sprinkler repairs. It's written in our ordinance that that is considered at risk.
Steve?
Just wanted to clarify, you said something about temporary easement, and then you mentioned a construction easement or easement during construction. Could you clarify those? Because it sounds like if we get an easement, it's forever for the sidewalk.
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Padre-Gruler, they're the same thing. Construction easement, temporary easement. We use those interchangeably sometimes. They're only, they don't get recorded, so they only last for the duration of the project, then that goes away. It's kind of like us, if you want to equate it to, we're going to rent their property for construction purposes for a period of time. And in exchange for that, we're going to pay them 10 cents for the square foot price of their property.
So it is just for the inconvenience during the period of construction. It isn't for the land. Land is ours.
Correct.
Okay, so it's within the right of way, and it's just for the inconvenience they suffer because of our equipment and personnel and stuff. Okay, that makes sense now. Thank you.
Scott?
Lance, can you give me some history here? Why is this sidewalk project being done now? Why wasn't the sidewalks put in at construction time? If new houses go in now today, or is sidewalks going in? Can you just help me connect some dots here?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor and Alderman Burlingame, there's a period of time in Minot's history where sidewalks were not required to be installed. This is roughly 1961 or 3 to 1996. So where the Sathers live is in the Hiawatha neighborhood, which was developed starting in about the mid-90s. So you'll see a patchwork of sidewalks within that development. Some people have them and some people don't. What this project is, was identified in our pedestrian study, Safe Routes to School study that we did about a decade ago, the Hiawatha corridor, because you have a lot of local streets that tie into Hiawatha. That was identified as the corridor where sidewalks should be installed to try to funnel not just children, but any pedestrian from those side streets onto Hiawatha, and then they can get on our shared use path system on 16th Avenue. And then over time, we've installed sidewalks around Washington Elementary, around our Redeemers. And we have a couple projects in the next couple of years to kind of finish some of the patchwork on some of the major avenues in the area. This is also tied in with the Bel Air Safe Routes to School. They're being bid at the same time here in February. So both of these projects will fill in some of the missing blanks around these two schools.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Thank you, Lance.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Kurt. Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak to the council? If not, we will move on to item 9, which is miscellaneous and discussion items. Moving on to item 9.1, the PFAS lawsuit discussion.
Mayor, it's my understanding that we have some external counsel joining us by Teams to present on this matter. I believe this is Mr. Hank Naughton.
That's right, Council and Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I'm joined by my colleague, Attorney Christian Clapp, and had a desire to, after speaking with council last week, to talk to you about a program our law firm, the Napoli-Skulnick Law Firm, has going forward, and that we thought might be of interest to Minot. We did speak to the previous administration about this about a little under a year ago, and wanted to give you an update on what's going on with this litigation, this cost recovery program that we have, and see if there was an interest within your community, within your board, to join. We have seen research that Minot has had some detects of PFAS, the aptly named everywhere chemical or forever chemical. And I do believe, Christian, do we have a slide deck that we've provided to the board if they would like to see it? And
we did provide it. I'm not sure if we need to share it via Teams or if they can see it.
I think if you want to just share your screen on Teams, that was kind of a discussion I had with our PIO officer that might be easier so that you guys are in charge of your own presentation.
Hank, do you want me to try to share that or do you want to share it?
if you could do it, I'm not really in a position to do that.
All right, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
So if you want to go to the first page there, a little bit about our firm. So I'm a partner at the Napoli-Skulnick Law Firm. We are based in Manhattan, but we have offices around the country. I'm currently sitting in Clinton, Massachusetts. By way of background, I know a little bit about what you go through, having been in the Massachusetts legislature for 26 years. During that entire period would, attend nightly meetings such as you're going through right now with either in the legislature or with the communities that I represented. During that, excuse me, during that period of time, water quality and watershed protection was at the top of my legislative agenda, as the reservoir that feeds most of eastern Massachusetts, including the city of Boston, was located in the district that I represented. I come from I did spend significant amount of time in municipal government, as well as the U.S. Army over the years. I come from a background where my dad ran the water utility here in central Massachusetts for about 40 years prior to his retirement. Our firm itself has been around for about 30 years. It has handled many cases, large-scale cases like this a multi-district litigation or class action, going back to MTBE, asbestos, the 9/11 trust fund, the opioid case, as well as this. So it's a little bit about our firm, myself, but I don't want to deny Christian the ability to tell you a little bit about where she comes from and her background, since she's one of your own.
Sure. Hi. You see my screen right now, but you can hear my voice, hopefully. I'm a native North Dakotan. I grew up in Grand Forks and have a brother in North Dakota still. My parents went to Florida after being in the cold for so long. And I currently reside in San Diego. I came across Minot based on some research we did with respect to PFAS levels in North Dakota. And part of the reason why we reached out to Minot was because of the fact that the Air Force Base is there, and because of the airport and the fire stations and the fire training facilities. And so because of that, our engineers were able to basically pull some data showing that Minot has some potentially elevated levels of PFAS.
Let me say this, and I'll try to be as brief as possible, and thank you, Christian, is when we do these presentations, it's always difficult, especially when they're by Teams or Zoom, to kind of gauge people's the baseline of what they know about PFAS. So if I'm telling you things you already know, which I probably am, please feel free to either question me or push me ahead. And these presentations tend to get a little better if there's some give and take. So Mr. Mayor and members of your council, please feel free to jump in. But these chemicals were primarily used in, well, not primarily, in just about everything, if you name it. But the big place where they initially came about was the use of firefighting foam and AFFF, where the active ingredient of the flame retardant is PFAS. And these are some of the manufacturers. There are a total of 32 manufacturers that are named as defendants, and they're the only ones in the world that made this product. So if this is in your water, it came from one of these makers who are now defendants in this case. And I'll describe the case a little bit more shortly, but let me give you a little bit more background on PFAS. If we could go to the next slide, Christian.
Sure, and I just want to add one thing, because we've gotten this question quite a bit just with respect to the defendants. The defendants in this litigation are only the manufacturers of PFAS. I know that particularly in North Dakota, there's a sensitivity with respect to the bases and things like that, and the government is not a defendant in this matter. So I just want to make that very clear.
Thank you. That's important in places like mine. It's important in every place. And myself, as a 5-tour veteran of both Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria, it's important to me personally as well. So PFAS is a type of put together with types of carbons, and it's a binding agent. And the good thing about it is it does its job incredibly well. As you can see in all of these products that it's found in photography equipment and supplies, firefighting foam, stain-resistant products, the fast food coming out of Wendy's or McDonald's, Teflon, the non-stick cookware, pesticides, shampoo. The bad thing about it is that if you want to go on to the next slide, is every place it's found, and this is about a 30,000 foot level of where it's found around military sites, around drinking water, and other known sites. Where you're not seeing a lot of dots is where there hasn't been significant testing, or there hasn't been the ability to do some testing. In your instance, because of the air base, Minot Air Base, there has been testing in your area. If you want to go to the next slide. So what's been found, and we feel we have significant evidence that upwards of 50 years, the makers have been aware of the detrimental health effects and the potential cause of these various different types of cancer, bladder cancer, kidney, liver, prostate, testicular, thyroid issues, fetal development issues. If you ever saw the movie Dark Waters with the actor Mark Ruffalo, who played a character who's a real person, a lawyer named Mark Bellot. Rob Bellot, excuse me. Rob Bellot was working for DuPont at the time, and he started noticing, and he and the other people in the area started noticing issues with, and this was in southern Ohio and West Virginia and northern Kentucky, problems with cattle in the area, but also problems with female employees of the DuPont plants having miscarriages, children with birth injuries, low birth weight, and other issues with children. And again, this was after research at that time, which is about 20 years ago now, was tracked back to the PFAS and the AFFF products that were being made by these companies. On the left-hand side, you see clusters around the country of more than 120,000 facilities which had been identified, and this is as of 2 years ago, as being clustered or people being impacted significantly by PFAS. And that's, if this was, again, these are areas that have been tested. Some areas of the country have not been significantly or heavily tested. Could you go on?
Yeah, I just wanted to add in too. I think with respect to the discovery, I think it's important to note that these companies were not in the dark knowing what the health impacts were of PFAS from the discovery that I've seen. And I think it's important to know that. I kind of think it's sort of like the tobacco litigation where they had, a lot of studies and they had a lot of background information and they knew that, there was potential for cancer, birth defects, things of that nature, and they just didn't disclose it.
Thank you. Not regulated as of yet, but being discussed because of the likelihood that leachate coming out of solid waste landfills will be impacting water supplies as time goes on, and have been impacting water supplies. Right here in Massachusetts, we have seen several. There is talk within the EPA and within the federal government to start regulating solid waste landfills. So this is another area that needs to be of concern to communities going forward. So as you can see, these are the industries, and several of which, or not all of which, are in your area, that have been classified as the top 10 industries that produce PFAS and impact water supplies, wastewater, and landfills in their areas. And I would suggest that just about all of these industries have some type of footprint in the area in and around Minot. So this again is another kind of on the 3,000 foot level that our environmental science department, which we have a full-time environmental engineer and department on staff, has seen the various different types of facilities that have produced PFAS, PFOA, AFFF that are impacting the communities around them. And as you can see up in the north center there, the area in and around Minot. Part 139 airports, which I believe you have, are the airports that the federal government mandated using AFFF foam over many years, and they're now scurrying to find an alternative to its use. And so you've got airports, hangars, fire departments at airports, and fire departments literally around the country with hundreds of thousands of gallons of AFFF foam sitting on their shelves, and they don't know what to do with. And eventually, some remediation is going to have to happen. So these are the types of treatment that could be spoken to as to what remediation, if you were to test and continue to test and be mandated to remediate, these are the different types of treatment. And with the activated granulated carbon as the, excuse me very much, as the most prominent one used, which is, depending on the size of your filtration plant, incredibly expensive. And then the question becomes what to do with it when you remove it. States have been incinerating it. There was a incineration plant in Texas, but now there's some resistance to that because of the PFAS becoming airborne. The state of New York recently outlawed incinerating the results of the treatment of the remediation. Excuse me, it's getting a little late on the East Coast here. Within the next few months, the unregulated contaminated monitoring rule will be promulgated through UCMR 5, through the EPA, requiring all public water supplies serving more than 10,000 people to be tested for 29 different compounds that are under scrutiny here. Systems from 3,300 to 10,000 people will also be subject to testing in the near future. Right now, the state of North Dakota does not have a mandatory contaminant level, maximum contaminant level. The EPA maximum contaminant level advisory, it was not mandatory, had been for many years 70 parts per trillion, which is approximately a drop of water in 30 Olympic-sized swimming pools. In June of last year, and this is really one of the four primary factors why we did feel a certain urgency to talk to you this evening. June of last year, the EPA issued a much more draconian health advisory level of 0.04 parts per quadrillion, which our environmental engineer tells us is basically the equivalent of a bottle of Coke in Lake Superior. So as you can see, a system the size of Minot will have to start testing under a mandatory practice within a very short period of time. We are anticipating that the EPA will be issuing a maximum contaminant level, a national maximum contaminant level of, we don't know yet, but it certainly won't be at that 0.04 parts per quadrillion with the protest that they got. And even in their press release, they said that they were aware that level could not even be tested to under current technology. So we are anticipating that somewhere in the 1 to 10 parts per trillion would be the maximum contaminant level that they'll be coming out with. So requiring under the EPA 3-year plan treatment and remediation. These issues have also been addressed in the National Defense Authorization Act. Congressman Neal, who had chaired House Ways and Means in the last session, had been looking for a long-term revenue stream for communities that have been impacted by military bases, but that was not arrived at. $10 billion was included in the Infrastructure Act, 2 tranches of $5 billion each, but that won't go very far, and that'll be administered through the environmental protection agencies within the various states. So why has that led us here today? In the early 2010s, communities around the country, either through straight action, and you can go to the next one, Christian, either through state action or through the decision on their own of their either their water utilities or their city councils or town councils, decided to start testing because of the concern about PFAS in their water. Cases started popping up around the country of communities that had high levels of PFAS detected, and they started bringing suits against the makers of these chemicals. And so many started rising up that the federal judiciary decided to take all of the cases and consolidate them into a single, what's called a multi-district litigation that is now based in Charleston, South Carolina, with about 800 plaintiffs, 800 water utilities from around the country that are plaintiffs that are seeking reimbursement costs for remediation of reimbursement of their remediation costs. The case was consolidated in 2018, has been proceeding since then. And discovery, meaning evidence, has been gathered in an ongoing fashion that we feel strongly supports our contention that these companies knew for upwards of 50 years of the detrimental health effects of their products and didn't tell anyone about it. That case has now gotten to the point where the first trial, this slide does need to be updated. The first trial, called a bellwether trial, the city of Stuart, Florida, is set for June 5th of this year. So we are anticipating that between that, the fact that a mediator was appointed in October of this year to discuss the settlement of these cases, as well as a decision in our favor, in the favor of the plaintiffs, against the defendants in September of this year, that the defendants moved for what's called a summary judgment motion, a motion to
Mr. Naughton.
Mr.
Yes, Naughton.
Ma'am.
This is Steph Stahlheim. I'm the
Yes.
city attorney. I was wondering if you could describe to the council if your law firm has located any PFAS in the city of Minot.
Kristen, you have that. Can you want to speak to that?
Yeah, oops, sorry, I don't have the chart up. Give me a second.
I've got it. So what we found is and I can share this with you, council. I thought we had. We have found in, let's see, two of your sources, DW1, DW2, they relatively low. Well, under the current scheme, 0.61 in one of your water sources, 6.1 parts per trillion, and 0.45 parts per trillion in your water. And then in your wastewater treatment plant 3.
It's pretty high. That's at 41.
Yeah, 41, and we're a total of. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say this was from testing in 2018, and I don't know that it was specifically testing for PFAS either. This was just information that we found from the state of North Dakota with respect to a bunch of different things that were tested in the water.
And Mr. Naughton and Mrs. Clapp, could you just describe to the city what would be the benefit of the city joining this litigation?
Sure. And just let me repeat one thing. We have found significant, our data that we have, it is a significant amount of PFAS in your in one of your wastewater treatment plants. But the benefit at this point would be The goal of this litigation is to either through judgment after trial or settlement prior to trial, is to get an amount of money put into a trust fund that would be administered by the court or by someone appointed by the court who would allow we would set up a system by which communities such as Minot could apply for those remediation costs when you get to the point where you would have to remediate. We envision this is not just a one-stop shop, because you are not at a point yet, like some water utilities around the country that have already made their remediation plans, and actually has some have already built plants to do the remediation. So we envision this as a long-term trust fund where you could go to when you have decided or been ordered to remediate, and you would be able to apply for your design costs and your build costs on another application. And then this is a long-term process where you would have to apply for your O&M costs further on down the line once you realize what those were. So that's the vision here, that it would be a revenue stream by which you could protect yourselves. And when the time comes and we do anticipate that once more in-depth testing is done in and around Minot, especially with the presence of the air base, the airport, fire training facilities, that those figures will be much more significant at that time.
And Mr. Naughton, could you just briefly describe the fee structure of this agreement, of the retainer agreement that's attached to the City Council agenda?
Absolutely. And so let me point out, there is absolutely no cost to becoming involved in this. It is a straight contingency fee agreement based upon the success that our firm has had in the past. We can assume all the costs of putting this litigation together on your behalf. If at the end of the day, we don't get you any money, then we don't get paid, but you pay absolutely nothing through this. And we make that very clear in the proposed retainer agreement, but we can see, we discuss what terms, beyond that the city would care to be made comfortable with.
And Mr. Naughton, is the contingency fee or the other fees associated with that negotiable in the contract?
That's the contingency fee is the straight fee that we're doing across the country. So it will be difficult to change that. But if there are other terms that you would need to discuss, we're happy to do that.
So, Mr. Naughton, that's all the questions that I have this time. I'd yield the floor to the council if the council has any questions for Mr. Naughton or Ms. Clapp about this civil litigation.
Thank you, Steph. Any questions? Steve?
Yes. Has Ward County or any other governmental subdivisions in the state signed on to this yet?
Not at this time.
Mr. Mayor and Councilor, North Dakota has not done a significant amount of testing. And so at the end of the day, this is a property damage case. You have property and it's being damaged by the products made by these companies. And so there has not been a significant amount of testing in North Dakota. What we found is what we've shared in regard to Minot. Once that testing starts, either through state action or through the EPA ordering it, we're anticipating that many communities, not just in North Dakota but around the country, will be impacted and will need to remediate.
Thank you.
So Minot could basically lead the way on behalf of North Dakota.
Carrie? I have a question for the city attorney, Stephanie. So one is, what is this just an FYI? And also, what are your thoughts and recommendations to the council on retaining this firm?
At this time, this is just an informational item that's being presented to the council. Ms. Clapp and Mr. Naughton has been in touch with our office here over the course of, I believe, the past year. to discuss this with the council. And so we wanted to bring it before the council to kind of review their general position on their case, give the council time to consider. My personal recommendation is that you take some time to digest the information that's been provided by council. And Mr. Naughton, is there a date certain by which you want the city council to advise as to whether or not they're in or out?
Well, that question has always been difficult to answer up until very recently, until the date of the first bellwether trial. And a bellwether trial is where the court can judge the strengths and weaknesses of both sides of the case. And we feel very, very strongly about our case, and that's in June. And I do think at some point likely in the spring, April, maybe May, but I'm betting more April or even late March that the judge is going to say no more plaintiffs in this particular lawsuit. So, and we would need time to gather evidence to speak to your DPW and go further into the facts that we do have about the PFAS detects in and around Minot to be able to draft a complaint on your behalf. We've got a very robust environmental law department that can draft complaints at very, very quickly, but they would still need some time to put that together and then get the complaint filed and get you into the suit. So my bet is end of March or April, the judge is going to say, start restricting the number of cases coming into the suit.
Can I propose we put this on the agenda for our March 6, 2023 meeting? Does that sound agreeable to folks?
Sure.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from the council? If not, were there any final comments from council? Or they're gone? Okay. If not, let's move on to 9.2, which is the...
Thank you for allowing us to spend some time with you.
Yes. Move on to item 9.2, the MAC EDC semi-annual presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Ross and members of Minot City Council. Derek, am I controlling this or are you? Okay, thanks. You got it. So I'm Brecca Kramer. I'm the president and CEO of the Minot Area Chamber EDC. I also have our economic development specialist, Mark Lyman, with me tonight. One of our board members did have to step out, but we have another board member present. I'm going to go ahead and just jump right on in. This is our report back to you. I always start with our vision. It's really a forward-looking organization, and so just wanted to put this in front of you. You guys have seen it and heard it before, so I'll just keep rolling. I want to give a nod to our board of directors. What you see in front of you is actually our 2023 board of directors. We're on an annual basis, calendar year from January to December. Even though we're reporting back on 2022 activity, I wanted to give a nod to who is leading the organization today. I do want to thank, we do have a new county rep on. Mr. Olson will be joining, or is on our board now. Mr. Bucky Anderson is stepping down, and so I want to thank Mr. Anderson for his time on the board. And then obviously we have our chair, Randy Hauk, who has moved to past chair. And our organization chair lead this year is Kevin Black. Obviously, Mayor Ross sits on there as well, along with these other members. I do want to just jump in. We did submit a full written report, and so really covers all the contractual items that we deliver and report back to. But I did want to highlight a couple of things in the presentation this evening. The first is our strategic plan. When I started in May, this was one of the first tasks that we took on, was really to develop a 5-year plan for the organization and look at where do we serve the community moving forward. As we looked at that, we really kind of came up with 5 key pillars. And within the report, you do have a copy of the plan. Within each of these pillars, you're going to have the pillar, the goals, and measurements. And then we also have some community metrics and also things that we're holding our organization up to throughout the strategic plan. But I do want to just highlight these 5 key pillars. Economic development is obviously something we're contracted. A portion of the funds that come from the city go directly towards our economic development efforts, and which are led by Mark Lyman, who's with us tonight. We also have added community development. We found, especially over this last year, that we play a supporting role in community development, whether it be educating on economic development tools like TIF districts, or supporting, programs that are being implemented by our strategic partners. And so we have added community development as one of our key pillars, as we feel that the advocacy side of what we do, this is a critical component to it, and it aligns with our partners like the North Dakota Department of Commerce. We have added workforce development. We naturally kind of stepped into that this year. Obviously, our nearly 700 member investors that we represent in the Minot area, this is one of the key topics that we continue to hear as a major challenge to growth and also providing services. So we do have economic or workforce development in here. Members Investor Services really ties into all of the programming that we do, the 13 different programs, the committees, the leadership component, our entrepreneurial programs, all of that falls under the services that we provide as a member investor nonprofit organization. And then obviously one of the key pillars that's critical to our area is Minot Air Force Base, our North Dakota National Guard, and the military support that we do. Minot Air Force Base, we know, has an economic impact of over $600 million, $607 million annually. And in February, we'll hear the new numbers for the past fiscal year. So those are really kind of where the key pillars sit. When we look at some of the things that were in our contract this past year, a couple of things I want to call out. We had one of the first site selector visits to the Minot area. We continue those conversations for opportunities of not only property that we own with the Logistics Park of North Dakota, the 800 acres that are just on the north side of the intermodal site, but we do promote through some of the tools like LOIS, other development in the community. Obviously, we know that impacts the sales tax and dollars coming in, so we feel that's an important role that we play. So just to highlight that, we did provide some information on this in July in our report, so I'll leave it at that. When we look at the program that we have implemented, the business retention and expansion, there is a report in there, and we've been doing this now for a few years. So we're now able to start to benchmark that data with what we heard from some of these visits and what we're hearing moving forward. Obviously, one of the things we are hearing in these visits, this is typically tied to primary sector, but we expanded our database for this to include some of the key development pieces, construction companies, engineering firms, and others we felt were important to add to our BR&E list. And so we expanded that out this year. And we have data from 25 interviews just in quarters 3 and 4 of this year. And so just wanted to call that out. And again, in Exhibit D in the overall package, you'll see some more data, some benchmark information as well, and an executive summary on this. As we work in the economic development space, obviously attracting new opportunities, you'll see that throughout the theme in all of this. One of the biggest things is the wins that we've had with intermodal service at the Logistics Park in North Dakota. With that, we are happy to say, as of today, we have substantial completion of the rail track expansion into Gavin Yard. That project is a $2.4 million track expansion project. We received $2 million last biennium from the state of North Dakota through the Ag Department, and so we'll be working on our final report to them. That's critical because we were given provisional approval to operate out there. This allows us to grow and expand our intermodal service and move the full unit trains out there. We also have had a few, obviously, pieces that we've been working with the city on, specifically our 5-year business incentive agreement that we entered into. We closed on the land and purchased the land from the city with this on October 3rd of this year. So that fell in this last quarter or this last half of our report. But we also now own all the assets, the track, all the different pieces, which really allows us to develop. We secured a long-term lease with an operator and have been providing continuous operations since we've started to shore all these pieces up, which is huge for the state of North Dakota. Which leads to one of the other bullets here. The state recognizes that there's a lot of opportunities for value-added ag, expansion of service, and really puts North Dakota on the map. And so obviously we have our anchor tenant with AGT Foods, which has been a great partner, but we know that there's others that this can serve, and it really benefits not only the state but the region. And so the state of North Dakota did sponsor a trip in December with the Ag Commissioner and some key legislators to go out to Fremont, Nebraska, and look at some of the opportunities. Fremont's operated by our operator, but we know that there's some opportunities for investment and probably some future ag opportunities for the state of North Dakota. So we're working closely with the ag department on some of that right now. I think city manager at one of our meetings highlighted that we're very fortunate. There's 2 economic development awards given from the state of North Dakota each year. Both of those awards came to Minot. The Economic Development Association of North Dakota Project of the Year is actually our logistics park of North Dakota. And so we're very proud of that. The other is a Community Development Award that went to the Axel Group in downtown Minot. We're continuing to work on the Chrissy Grant to market the logistics park of North Dakota sites. And as mentioned with our member services piece, we have the 13 community volunteer committees. Obviously, the critical to the missions and growth of those and sustaining with the modernization projects is Task Force 21. And we're really proud of the work that we did this last year in supporting small business and entrepreneurs. That's new. And we've had some great success as far as with that. Even further, obviously we continue to work with our partners. Here's just some of the places we've been and tied in there. And I will share that we also are working closely with partners like Trinity Health to explore repurposing. I believe the mayor in his mayor's report mentioned a hospital reuse committee. We're looking to see what can be done there to have answers. I know some of you have been part of those conversations, whether it be workforce, childcare. What are some of those solutions that we could possibly look at that hospital property for? So we're leading the way with those discussions. And then obviously we are tracking a number of different projects. That's part of economic development. It's a long-term play. And so at this time, actual prospects, we're tracking 10 primary sector projects for the Minot region. Some we're getting to some very thoughtful discussions. And the projects are ranging anywhere from $10 million, some are in the 150 to 2 billion. And so we're working really hard to see what that looks like and where Minot best benefits for some of the opportunities here. And then obviously in that community development space that we called out in the pillars, we do support some of these economic development tools. TIF is a great example. In our strategic partnerships, you guys are all aware of the Magic Fund applications that came through, so I'll just leave those on the screen. We provide a report on a regular basis, our staff does, with the economy at a glance, tracking not only city, tourism, a lot of the different pieces that matter to developers, and really kind of giving a snapshot of what our economy looks like. We also work with the state and have responded to a number of primary sector RFPs this past year. And our strategic partner in really kind of economic development policies. And we're fortunate to have great relations with the staff as far as to advance these pieces. I know this is the hot topic, is workforce development. We did actually help to facilitate and lead the $1.8 million for our region. These are the projects that were actually awarded and funded. I'm proud to say that all these were awarded, and so we're still working with the state. And I know this session, they're also looking at doing another kind of RWIP program. And so we like these programs where it takes state fund dollars and funnels them into our community so we can help to determine what the greatest need is and then align that for the use of those dollars. We called this out in our July report, but we work closely with the Department of Commerce with their Find the Good Life, and you'll hear more from us as we in 2023 roll out the pilot program with Wayfinders. Roll Call is a national agency leading workforce development efforts. The state of North Dakota has retained them, and they've selected Minot nationally as the community that they want to funnel down the work that they do for the state into a Wayfinders kind of local, taking the state program and funneling it down. So we're very fortunate to have that partnership because it's a very it's a big investment, and that is something that we'll be leading the way as a pilot program with them. And then we've had our partners, whether it be Katie with the Workforce Development Council and Department of Commerce, or Pat Bertinelli with Job Service. We have great relationships, and they frequently visit our community to help us with workforce solutions. And frankly, they're advocates. They're championing and talking about the things that we're doing here across the state. And then obviously there's some of the pieces with the online visibility. I'll just kind of leave these up here because these are things that you guys have seen before. And I try to keep it brief because we did provide a written report. We have our 5-year strategic plan in there, and more than happy to answer any questions.
Carrie.
So, and maybe there isn't anything, but is there anything in your contractual obligations that proved to be more difficult to achieve or work on than you had anticipated?
No, actually, I don't believe so. I mean, I feel that we set even higher standards for our organization, and really what the strategic plan has allowed us to do is to take an even deeper dive and not only track measurements under each of the goals that we've established and the board has adopted, but even add additional. Obviously, we'll continue to do the things with economic development, but we've added community development. That's not part of our contract, but it really does tie to the overall work. So I wouldn't say so. I mean, I would say if there was any kind of challenge, it would be in the sense that sometimes identifying all the primary sector businesses in the area. Not everyone that's a primary sector business registers with the state of North Dakota. So we sit down annually and review those lists, and we really kind of utilize our stakeholders, partners, and to dive in and make sure that as we're doing BR&E visits, the business retention and expansion program, we have the most accurate contacts and lists, and that we're not missing anyone. We want to do our part to reach out to all of those in that primary sector space. And as mentioned, we've actually expanded onto that. So I think that if you look at it from a percentage standpoint of, hey, we're going to hit 65% of the primary sector, we do our best to make sure that we have all of those identified, but because not everyone registers, there could always be a gap that we may not see, but I would say I think we've done a pretty good job. The Minot area is very connected, and we have great stakeholders that help to ensure that we have a comprehensive list.
And I appreciate I know, Paul and I, we're sort of animate about, accountability and transparency for, entities receiving, government dollars. And so I really appreciate that you lay out every contractual obligation you have with us, and honestly and candidly present where you are on that, so that we can see, and the residents whose money it is can see exactly how the goals and obligations and how you're meeting them. So I appreciate this report and ongoing, work on meeting and exceeding, our expectations.
Thank you for that.
Scott.
Bricka, first off, nice to see you. I'm sure you're going to be shocked at what my question is going to be right now, so brace yourself. But you and I have had multiple conversations over the last few months about daycare and childcare as a workforce development issue. Could you kind of give a council and the public an update on what you've done so far with that, and sort of where you're going in the future?
Sure. Thank you for the question. So as far as with that, obviously that's something that matters, especially when it comes to workforce. Workforce and childcare, it seems like daycare, whichever way you want to call it, seem to be interlocked in bigger discussions. And frankly, at the state level, the governors call these out as key initiatives. So where we're going as far as with it, there are a lot of conversations, and we appreciate not only you, but also Alderwoman Evans' engagement as far as in that space. So we are adding, January 30th, we'll have actually a workforce development position added to our team. The individuals are accepted, and their first day will be on the January 30th, not June, January 30th. And then we are tied in with the state and tracking this legislative session and working very closely with our partners to see what possible funding sources there are. We're working on some strategies with the Hospital Reuse Committee and looking at the opportunities with the property, the current Trinity Hospital property, to see are there workforce/childcare solutions that would be available to, for example, first responders, our military that serve 24, that are on alert 24/7. We're trying to think through, are there programs out there that we can align and start to solve or crack this nut, frankly, It's something that, there's not an easy solution, but we're working at all levels to ensure that we are at the table for those thoughtful conversations. We were part of the governor's original roundtable on this. And so we're seen as one of the communities that's willing to think outside the box, to take resources that are put into this and think differently. We know it's multi-tier though. It's not only providing the solution of childcare, but it also is finding the workers that can work in those facilities. And so it's not an easy one, but we are certainly, it's at the forefront of our focus right now, because we feel that that is best serving our almost 700 member investors and the whole region, frankly.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Scott. Anything else? Steve?
Just a couple of comments. I think one is in terms of need for creativity with childcare. If I remember correctly, I sent you a copy of an article from the Grand Forks Herald about some innovative project that I think it was Warren, Minnesota put together, this little town in the North Woods, and they're using economic development funding, I think especially sales tax, to help start up and facilitate a daycare provider investing directly in that person's business. And I think you're right, the issue of finding enough personnel who have the training and the temperament to take care of young children is really important. And I think there are some real opportunities there to kind of work together in those two areas, workforce development and child care. So I want to add my voice to what Scott and Carrie have been saying. I think that's an absolute critical thing for the community. And, you know, whether at the Minot level or the regional level or the state level, people need to hear that, particularly the legislators. I think the governor is sensitive and he knows what's happening. I think it's the legislators who need to have some consciousness raising, so to speak, about this. The other thing I wanted to say is that I'm really pleased with what I'm seeing here in terms of both the programming you're doing and the planning and the actual economic development efforts and how you're reporting it. This is, I think, the most detailed report we've ever obtained from MAC, EDC, RDC, REA. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be flippant here, but it's a mouthful. And I think it reflects, the transparency is wonderful, like Carrie was saying. You know, when we're talking about taxpayers' money, people need to know exactly where the money's going and assure themselves, and we need to assure ourselves that it's being spent wisely. We may have some disagreements about priorities or differences about priorities, but I think if it's laid out where the money's going, why it's going there, and what the plans are, particularly long-range plans, I think it makes everybody happier. It's what we're obligated really to do. So I wanted to compliment you and your staff on the work and also how it's reflected in all of these attachments and in your presentation today. I continue to feel more optimistic and more positive about where we're going and the partnership that we have with your organization and the ultimate successes that we're looking for in terms of our community. So good job so far, and hopefully it'll get even better.
Mayor Ross, Alderman Patergula, thank you for those comments. And maybe just a comment on the child care side. If you saw some of where we put those RWIP dollars, they went specifically to some small low-hanging fruit solutions, but it was to increase capacity. And we're hopeful that within the session, if we can continue to do that, we can kind of attack it from a multi-prong approach, you know, tackle some of the areas that have some low-hanging fruit and then continue to look for those big innovative solutions as well that will tee our community up for success down the road.
You know, with my 3-hour meeting that the mayors had with the governor, a significant portion was on childcare, and I think Mayor Riley of Wofford City, he really kind of took the lead on this discussion, and you know, he talked about housing and he talked about a lot of things and attracting people, but he said if you don't have daycare, you don't need housing. And Wofford City just finished building or in the process of building their second daycare center in Wofford City. Wofford City is doing that. And he told us in that meeting, he said that Wofford City has taken the approach that childcare is infrastructure. And that was really that kind of lit up some of the mayor's eyes in that meeting. So
was it the city that the city was building the daycare with their dollars?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And that's how important it is to them is you know.
Well, if they're viewing it as infrastructure, yeah.
So and the mayor or the governor, you know, also talked. I think if things go his way, I think there's going to be significant dollars for workforce development / childcare. So, thank you, Rekha. Thank you for your report.
Absolutely, thank you.
Let's move on to item, unless there's anything else to discuss, we can move on to our liaison reports and.
Wait.
Where?
We have the big confetti moment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's like the balloons should be coming down from the sky. We've been waiting for this moment
Here we go,
forever.
9.3, my apologies. Minot's Metropolitan Planning Organization MPO status presented by Lance.
We did it. That's all you need to say. We did it.
Do you have any information for us, Lance? I was looking right at it.
Mr. Mayor, nothing besides my memo, but I think it is a big accomplishment for our community and the region, and we should be proud of that. We've been after this goal for some time, so it's finally here, but now the work begins. We have a lot of committee time coming up to get everything organized and off the ground, so staff will be very busy with that, along with county staff and others coming up in the next several months.
Any questions or comments?
So for people listening who may be like, what the heck are they talking about? We made 50,000 population, which has been a goal for a very long time. And with that comes a whole new slew of opportunities for our city and our region. And so it's a big deal. And we will now start the hard work, like Lance said, of being an MPO and what that means and making sure we have, everything in place.
Correct. Yes.
Anything else? Thank you, Lance.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Now let's move on to item number 10, liaison reports. Steve, do you want to start us off?
Thanks, Tom. A bunch of things. First of all, at this month's meeting of the Emergency Resource Council, on which I represent the council, we had a very interesting presentation by the Red Cross chapter. Their primary service at this point is to help residents of single-family and larger homes that have been impacted by fire. I think it's something like 200 a year they provide emergency services to. So it brought back lots of memories of having been a Red Cross volunteer and reminded me of what an excellent resource they are, a volunteer resource. So we continue to meet on a monthly basis, and every month we have a presentation from a different organization or governmental entity in terms of what they do. I also am now serving on the group coordinating the 911 center. I mentioned the large number of calls that they receive every year and every day, 200 calls a day pretty much on the average. They're well in the middle of transitioning over into a new facility in our new city hall, and I got a short tour of that. I want to thank Margaret Hagen for walking me through the building. It's really exciting to see the much better and bigger space they'll have to coordinate those services. So that's an exciting development. It will help everybody in town. In terms of, the Commission on Aging did not meet this past month. I continue to serve with Carrie on the County Planning Commission, and we are actually at the point of having a final draft of the Ward County zoning ordinance, and it is 104 pages, if I can count correctly. Yes, 104 pages, and we're going through it line by line at our meetings now, and the meetings are becoming much more productive, and we're settling on wording of items, trying to figure out what kinds of development should be allowed where, things like that. So this will probably continue for another 2 months. I think our goal is to be done by, the end of March, if possible.
For seating.
Right. That's an important consideration. And then to go on the road and have public forums throughout the county explaining what the plan is and getting public input. So county planning is being productive and going well at this point, and we're seeing some results. I also am a member of the Employee Benefits Committee, and I think some good discussions are being had there in terms of how to improve the benefit package for our city employees. And I also have been involved in discussions with the city manager, the fire chief, the police chief, and the HR director in terms of looking at developing a program to improve the mental health of our emergency responders, and perhaps ultimately enlarging that to all city employees. But there's some real opportunities there, and I presented my initial thoughts on that as a clinical and forensic psychologist in the 6-page memo I sent to the parties involved. We're looking, I think, probably at getting some sort of consultant to come in and develop a formal program for us. There are also some national organizations that offer training and skill development, particularly in terms of building resiliency and hardiness among emergency responders that are pre-made, and we could perhaps contract with them to come in and do some training and some assistance. All of us realize that being a first responder, it can be a very stressful job, and we want to do everything we can to make it easier for those people. So I hope good things will be coming out of that. So that's basically what I've been doing this past month.
Thank you, Steve. Carrie?
So the library committee is meeting, but there are some pretty alarming anti-library bills in the legislature. So our library director is tracking those and going to testify on some of those. But if folks are interested, the North Dakota Library Association Facebook page is sort of coordinating it all. So take a look, see the proposed legislation that would impact our public libraries, and if you're so moved, get involved in that. The family shelter, so as folks know, Broadway Circle is the name of the project for our new family shelter and other LMI stuff down on South Broadway. Work is continuing on the inside and inside the existing building on construction there, where the pantry and kitchen will be. So that is good stuff. And also, it's not a liaison report, but I wanted to take this moment, because we haven't met since, to thank the law enforcement people who filled in for our Minot Police Department when they were attending the service for our fallen officer. It was Chief Clucombe, Ward County Sheriffs. Renville County.
Oh.
McHenry, and Montreal County. So all of us appreciate our sisters and brothers from those communities that were able to ensure we still had law enforcement in our community as our police department paid their final respects.
Thank you, Carrie. My liaison report was included in my mayor's report. Lisa, are you still with us?
I am. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only committee that I'm a part of that met this last month was the City, County, Park, and School Liaison Committee. And we did have nearly an hour-long conversation on islands or enclaves, which are pieces of property that lie within the city, but they're actually county property. And so there was a lot of information that was shared. I think we learned a lot, and we created more questions that hopefully will have answers coming at our next meeting. And that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Yes.
Lisa, this is Attorney Stahlheim. I do have a question about the liaison committee. My understanding is there were some questions directed towards the state's attorney and the city attorney, and I've attempted to find out the specifics of what they were. So if you could send me your understanding of what it was that you were looking for, the committee was looking for from the city attorney's office, I can definitely look into those for you.
I will certainly do that.
Thank you.
Scott.
The only committee I've had that met was the ad hoc committee on benefits that Steve talked about, so I don't have any other update.
Mark.
Attorney Stahlheim, I can probably help a little bit with the what was looked for there.
Okay.
And I think Harold was at that meeting as well, if I'm not mistaken. And also, I'll just make note that the next meeting of the Employee Pay and Benefits Ad Hoc Committee is on the 24th at noon in this room.
That's it. Paul?
I have a visit Minot board meeting tomorrow. Other than that, I have nothing to report.
Okay. Nothing else. We can move on to the final item on the agenda, and that is adjournment.
So moved.
Moved by Paul. Is there a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.